Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at the Plague Witch character. But before we get started, of course, disclaimer, this is a role play, casual play build. It is not meant for meta play. So now moving on. Plague Witches are really interesting character types that I've come up with. And they basically use both magic and stamina. As you can see, they are hybridized, and they do call upon the powers of the plague to help them and aid them in combat. But they also use other things too to help them and aid them in combat. And you guys will see what I mean when we get there. So, moving on to the character itself. We are an Orc Necromancer. I know a lot of people have been asking me, when you get to the Necromancer, can you do an Orc? I finally did one. This is the Plague Witch character, of course. Necromancer, Orc. You can be any race with this. There are other races that do play this better, like the Dark Elf and the Khajiit can play this better. But for this particular setup, I really like the Orc because of the extra weapon damage you can bring. It's very powerful. So let's go over the stats. So as you guys can see, to play this as a Magicka damage dealer, or as the damage dealer itself, you want to put 24 into stamina, 40 into Magicka. You want a little bit more in Magicka because you are using a little bit more Magicka based abilities. Your stamina side, you are using some stamina abilities. Now our mag recovery for this build is coming in at 901, 321 health, and 606 stamina recovery. And our max stats, 25k Magicka, 22k health, 24k max stamina. Now that's with an Orc. If you are playing a Dark Elf, you will have higher max stamina and Magicka. If you are playing a Khajiit, you will have higher max Magicka and stamina by a small amount. But you won't have as much health as the Orc has. So, alright, moving on to the weapon and spell damage. Oh, before we move on, of course, how to play this as a healer. If you want to play this character as a healer, you will take the 24 points out of stamina, put it into Magicka. If you want to play this as a tank, you're going to take out of Magicka and stamina, put enough into health to give you at least a 20 or 30k health, and then you can put back into Magicka and stamina how you want, or you can just put into Magicka, your choice. Alright, so now, like I said, going over the damage, we do have a 2039 spell damage with a 51% spell crit. We have a 2389 weapon damage with a 47% weapon crit. We have a 13k spell resist with a 12k, almost 13k physical resist. We are using the Thief Mundus Stone to increase our crit chance. Now, if you want to play this as a healer, I would suggest using the Atronach Mundus Stone to give you higher mag recovery. And when you're playing a healer also maybe Dubious Cameron Throne, or Witchmother's Potent Brew. That'll give you higher mag recovery. So, now, we do have Major Prophecy on both bars because we do have Inner Light on both bars. And we are using Tri-Stat food with this. Moving on. Because of the way this build plays, when you play it as a tank, you are going to want to use Tri-Pots. When you're playing it as a damage dealer, you will want to use Spell Power Pots. And then if you want to, you can use the weapon power pots too, but magic power pots work better in the long run. And then, like I said, you can use Witch Mothers and all that. Alright, now going over the sets, starting with the monster set. Everyone already knows what it is. It is Veladrits, because you guys saw it on the list there. So Veladrits is a really good set for this because, one, it adds to your weapon damage, and number two, when you deal damage, you have a 20% chance to spawn 3 disease spores in front of you after 1 second that deal X amount of disease damage to the first enemy hit, and this effect can occur once every 9 seconds. So this is really a powerful set. Now moving on to the next set, we are using Night Mother's Gaze. This is how we maximize our damage with physical damage, is using this. So this gives us weapon crit, weapon damage, weapon crit. The 5-piece. When you deal critical damage, you apply Major Fracture to the enemy, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280 for 6 seconds. This is up all the time because you're constantly dealing critical damage. The next set, and this is an unusual set, one I've never used before. So we are using Moon Hunter for this. The Moonhunter set is actually quite good because the 2-piece adds spell damage, 3-piece spell damage, 4-piece spell critical, and then on the 5-piece, when your alchemical poisons fire, you increase the spell damage by 600 for 6 seconds. Your alchemical poisons fire a lot because you are using them on the front bar. So these things are going to go off a lot. So your spell damage on the front bar is going to be higher, and it's going to help you when you swap to the back bar and you use spell damage abilities on the back bar. Alright, now going over our traits and enchants on the gear, starting with the monster head set. We are using a light helm, well-fitted, with a tri-stat enchant. The well-fitted is to reduce our dodge roll cost and sprint cost, and the multi or tri-stat is to give us that hybridization so we can play any role. This is a light armor build. So, moving on to the shoulders, we are using Divine's Max Magicka. The Divine's is to increase our Mundus Stone capability, and the Max Magicka is there to boost our Magicka pool. We want that higher Magicka pool. Moving on to the chest, we are using a reinforced heavy chest, crafted, because Night Mothers is a crafted set. Veladrith, by the way, drops in Cradle of Shadows, and the Moonhunter drops in Moonhunter Keep dungeon. So, but this is a crafted set. Anyone can craft this with, I think it's 6 or 5 traits or something, but it's a very nice set to have. But again, we have reinforced on the chest because the heavy armor chest will always be the best armor piece to make reinforced. It'll give you higher resistances. This gives you greater survivability. Moving on to the small pieces here, the gloves, the belt, and the boots, which are all light, by the way, and Divines, and Max Magicka. Again, or, sorry, we have a Max Magicka on the shoulder and belt, and Stamina on the boots and gloves. This is the one where I did that. The reason for this is this way we get that higher Magicka pool, but we also get that higher Stamina pool as well. On the legs, we are using, of course, well fitted again for the reduced dodge roll with the sprint cost, and these are medium. So the way you're going to set this up is your smaller pieces from belts, boots, gloves, shoulders are going to be light along with your helm. Your chest is going to be heavy, your legs are going to be medium. And you're going to put tri-stats in the medium legs to hybridize, but the well-fitted is for the reduced dodge roll and sprint costs. Works out really well in light armor. Alright, moving on to the jewelry. We are running 2 Moonhunter Tri-Rune rings here. Now, to do Tri-Rune, you do have to own the Clockwork City DLC or have a subscription. If you don't have to worry about it. You can just put the 2 spell damage or a spell damage and weapon damage enchant on here. And then with the necklace, you're going to go bloodthirsty with a mag recovery. The reason for the mag recovery is because you're primarily using mostly magic abilities, but you want to be able to get that stamina back, or that magic back, more effectively. Don't worry about stamina. Getting stamina back, you do get it back through synergies and everything else. Alright, moving on to the next thing. Our weapons. We are using a sharpened main hand weapon. Now, if you want to do this, you can equip it with a poison enchant, but we are using poison here. Now, the poison we use is a drain stamina magicka poison, and this will drain it from your target and increase the cost of their stamina and magic abilities by 10% and restore 151 stamina and magicka per second to you for 4.3 seconds. So you get 151 stamina per second. That comes out to 302 stamina every 2 seconds, which adds into these right here when they do proc. And they do proc quite a bit. On the offhand, we are using Nernhoned, also with an absorb stamina enchant if you don't want to use your poisons here. But the poisons, again, are the drain poisons. And I like these. These things are really good. They work out really well. Now, moving on to the back bar, we are using just an infused lightning staff with a weapon and spell damage enchant. Remember, when Moonhunter procs, it's going to give you really high spell damage, but you also want to boost up your weapon damage. That's the other reason why I chose Orc, is Orc gets extra weapon damage in their race. So they already get a really high weapon damage, but your spell damage is going to wind up being higher in the long run. Because of this enchant here and the fact that the Moonhunter can proc 600 spell damage. Alright, so now that you guys have seen the gear, we're going to go over the skills. Starting with the main skills, or the class skills. In the class skills, I use a lot of plague damage skills. So I use the Pestilence Colossus, Venom Skull, Blighted Bones, and Detonating Siphon. Those are the primary skills I use. Here, for stamina based, I also use the Avid Boneyard and Skeletal Arcanist. The rest of the abilities are all Magicka based, and I take the ones that best reflect my ability to play this character as a tank, a healer, and damage dealer. Moving on to weapons. Dual wield is our primary weapon of choice. So we will take dual wield, ultimate, active abilities, and passives. This way we can take advantage of all these abilities for our character. Now we also use destruction staff, so we will learn the ultimate, active abilities, and passives here so we can take advantage of all these different things in different roles. Now, like I said, if you want to play this as a healer, you can learn the resto staff, passives, active abilities, and ultimate. Working on to the armor skills now, we are a light armor build, so we do take all the light armor passives and the active ability. Medium armor, we take the top two and the bottom one. I made a mistake here, because originally I thought this character was a medium build for some reason. Probably because of the dual wield. But yeah, top two and the bottom one, those you can take advantage of. And the heavy armor, you're going to take the top three. All these passives you're going to take advantage of in some way, shape, or form. Soul Magic. Now, the top three are optional. The bottom two, I would suggest taking Soul Summons and Soul Lock. They come in handy in the late game. Fighters Guild, ultimate, active abilities, and passives come in handy. So take them all. That way you have them available for different roles. Mages Guild, same thing. And same with Psijic Order. Now, I'm not going to explain this too many times, but people who keep asking, why do I take these things? All these different skills, if I'm never using them all. Well, you can't use them all the time, but you can use them in different situations, and that's what it comes down to. So, is having the tools necessary to play the role in different situations, or play your character in different roles in different situations. Also, I do take all the synergies for their benefits of group play, and the two passives in the Undaunted skill line. Both of these are very important to get. And you get this from doing dungeons, by the way. Assault skills, the ultimate and the top two passives are what I get. And these are from the Alliance War. You can get these from doing Battlegrounds and PvP Cyrodiil. So I take the ultimate and these two active abilities. I do not take any passives because I'm primarily playing PvE. And then same thing over here. I take the ultimate, two active abilities, and the one passive, so I can use them in PvE. If you are going to be playing in PvP a lot, I would suggest getting all the active abilities and passives here, because you can take advantage of them in that area. Racial skills, we are an orc, which is really great. We get craftsman, which increases the experience gain of heavy armor, but it also we gain inspiration gain, so it helps with our crafting. We get Brawny, which increases our max stamina by 2,000. We get Unflinching Rage, which increases our max health by 1,000. And then whenever we deal damage with a weapon ability, we heal for 660 health every 4 seconds. And then Swift Warrior increases your weapon damage by 258 and reduces your cost to sprint by 12% and increases your movement speed of sprint by 10%. The nice thing about this is when you have it with that armor trait, that reduces sprint cost and dodge roll cost, because one of the things that's nice about light armor that I love is Grace. Reduce the cost of sprint per piece of light armor equipped. So we get a 15% reduced sprint cost, an extra 10% from our monsters, from our helm and legs, and then we get the extra from the racial passive on the orc of 12% reduced sprint cost. So we actually get a lot of reduced sprint cost with the orc in light armor. Alright, crafting. Alchemy, medicinal use, very important. As soon as you can get this, I would suggest at least getting this one passive from the crafting line, because when using potion, resulting effects last 30% longer. This works out really well in dungeons and trials. And then provisioning, gourmand, and connoisseur. Both of these add 20 minutes to your food duration and your drink duration. Alright, now that you guys have seen that, let's go over the skills on the bar. Starting with the first ability we have on the front bar, we do use Blighted Blast Bones. Now this will summon up a blighted skeleton who will run out after 2.5 seconds, explode, dealing disease damage to all enemies in nearby, and applying major file to them for 4 seconds, reducing the healing received by 30%. It does create a corpse on death. The next ability we have is called Rapid Strikes. Now, this is optional. You can use Rending Slashes, but this is our spammable, so we do want to keep this here. As you can see, it does X amount of damage with 5 consecutive hits. Each hit increases the damage by 3%, and the final hit deals 300% more damage. Our next ability is called Avid Boneyard. Now this deals X amount of shock or frost damage over 10 seconds. It does consume a corpse on cast to deal 20% more damage. And then you or an ally standing in the graveyard can activate the Grave Robber Synergy, dealing X amount of frost damage to enemies in the area, healing you for the damage done. Our next ability is our Detonating Siphon. Now this will violently drain the last spark of life from a corpse, dealing X amount of disease damage over 12 seconds to all enemies around the corpse and between you and the corpse. If the siphon lasts its full duration, it causes the corpse to explode, dealing an additional X amount of disease damage to all enemies around the corpse. While slotted, your damage is increased by 3%. Then we have Inner Light. This gives us increased max magicka by 5% and Major Prophecy, increasing our spell critical by 2191. Next ability we have is called Pestilence Colossus. Now this one is really cool. You summon this big flesh colossus out of the ground. He starts smashing the ground 3 times over 3 seconds, and each time he hits, he does more increased disease damage. And then each smash applies major vulnerability to the enemy hit for 3 seconds, increasing their damage taken by 30%. And I do want to explain this to you guys again. When you trigger this, it will start that 3-second countdown for major vulnerability on the first smash. It resets that major vulnerability thing on the second smash, and on the third smash it resets it. So it actually lasts 5 seconds in total, not just 3. Alright, moving on to the back bar. On the back bar we have our Destruction Staff, but we do have a stamina ability here, and we do use Rearming Trap. Now this will set a Shrapnel Blade trap at your location that takes 1.5 seconds to arm. It lasts 1 minute. When triggered, the trap deals X amount of damage and an additional X amount of damage over 6 seconds. Immobilizes the enemy for 6 seconds if they can be. And then you get Minor Forcing, increasing your critical damage by 10%. That's both spell and physical. And after being triggered, the trap resets and can be triggered 1 more time. So we want to keep this up as much as possible. Next ability we have is called Blockade of Storms. Now this does X amount of damage over 8 seconds in an 18 by 12 meter area in front of you, dealing X amount of shock damage every second for the 8 seconds. Concussed enemies in the circle can be set off balance for 5 seconds. Next ability we have is called Skeletal Arcanist. This does basically you summon a skeleton and fight by your side for 16 seconds, who will attack the closest enemy every 2 seconds for X amount of shock damage to all other enemies and nearby. To them and all other nearby enemies. So, really nice. Next ability we use is Shock Clinch. This does damage up front, a little bit of damage over time, but every time you hit with this, it'll stun the target it'll stun a target for 2.5 seconds if they don't have immunity. And then on top of that, it will deal shock damage to nearby enemies. This is really good because it's splash damage. Next ability we have is called Inner Light. Now this does give us our increased max magicka and Major Prophecy. Again, that's why we have it here. And it's not 5%, it's actually 7% magicka with 2% magic recovery if we have the passives from the Mage's Guild. Next ability we have is our Staff Ultimate. This is Eye of Lightning. You create a cataclysmic storm above you that builds after 2 seconds and lays waste to all nearby enemies, dealing X amount of shock damage every second for 7 seconds. It's very powerful. Alright, Now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the CP. Starting with the red tree, we have 56 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. We do have 10 in a spell shield, increasing your spell resistance by 1,000 something. I do want to check something because, yeah, I want to make sure that I have that right. So, yeah. So 1,003, and then moving on over here, we have 28 in light armor focus. This increases your your physical resistance in light armor by 2542 for wearing 5 or more pieces of that light armor. And then we have 31 into thick skin, reducing your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 into hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%. And 43 into elemental defender, reducing your damage taken from flame frost shock or magic damage by 10%. Moving on to the final red tree, we have 40 in the Bastion. This increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. 19 in a quick recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And then moving on to the green tree, we have 40 in the Warlord, reducing break free cost by 16%. 16 into Sprinter, reducing sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing bash cost by 10%. And then moving on over here, we have 75 in a Mooncalf, increasing your stam recovery by 14%, and 43 in Arcanus, increasing mag recovery by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 40 in the Tumbling, reducing dodge roll cost by 16%, 40 in the Shadow Ward, reducing block cost by 16%. And then moving on into the blue tree, we have 43 in the Blessed, increasing healing done by 10%, 23 in the Elfborn, increasing critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 10%. 43 into Elemental Expert, increasing Flame Frost Shock and magic damage by 10%. And then moving on to here, we have 19 into quick Physical Weapon Expert, increasing light and heavy attacks with two-handed, one-handed and shield dual-wield bow, and werewolf form by 12%. And then 19 into Staff Expert. This increases light and heavy attacks with Destruction, Staff, and Restoration Staff, as well as Overload from the Sorcerer line by 12%. And then we have 40 into Mastered Arms, increasing direct damage done by 16%. Moving on to the final blue tree, we have 43 into Mighty, increasing your physical poison disease damage done by 10%. 20 into Precise Strikes, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 9%. And then 9 into Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. Now, I know what a lot of people are going to think. This thing's not going to do that much damage. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a parse. On the little guy here, this is to represent your damage in a dungeon against normal bosses and veteran bosses. And this is going to represent what it's like when you're in a controlled, organized group. And what I mean by controlled, organized group, that means you are in a group with every class type, with every buff and debuff you can imagine. Alright. So let's go ahead and start with this. We're going to drink our potion. We're going to do our Trap Beast and go through the rotation here. And I already screwed up. I knew it. God darn it. I can usually get about 24k out of this thing, and I didn't get it this time, but that's okay. That was because I screwed up with my shot clinch. It didn't go off on time, and my Trap Beast didn't go off in the first cast. So, but yeah, I can usually deal about 24k DPS to that. Alright, now we're going to go over here and we're going to parse on this. This one I should be able to get closer to 32,000 DPS. And remember, you're going to get resources back from your poisons. Your poisons are there for that reason. So again, and this time we're going to use an ultimate as well. Oh, I did that skeleton twice. That's okay. Oh, I'm actually getting about 30k. Or 40k this time. Wow. And then you are going to want to start swapping bars a little quicker here. The reason why is because you're going to want to try not to use too much stamina. Because otherwise you got to throw some heavy attacks in there, and that really sucks. But you can keep this at about 32,000 if you can keep up the rotation effectively. So I was burning through a lot of stamina there for a little bit of time. Argonian also works really good at this because of the fact that every time you drink a potion of any type, you get X amount of stamina and magicka back. Alright, and I was also not activating my ultimate, this one. If I were to activate this ultimate while I'm standing in it, I can get the synergy, and I didn't do that. I should have. Alright, so now that you guys have seen that, let's go ahead and jump over to a dungeon here, and we are actually going to jump into the Depths of Malatar. Now, while I'm on my way there, I'm going to be explaining a few things. Depths of Malatar dungeon was added with the Wrathstone DLC. It is one of the newer dungeons added to the game because Wrathstone came out right before Elsewhere, and that's why I'm playing in this dungeon. It's one of the more difficult, recently added dungeons. Secondly, when I get here, I'm going to adjust my skills so I can play more solo-friendly.
Your notes said abandoned, as in no one left the mark inside.
Take it to the Imperial census.
Due diligence, please. It's why I'm alive and you're... Hold on. We have company.
Is this the one that gives stamina back? Yeah, that's what we're going to put on the front bar. And then I need to get rid of my Avid Boneyard, but we're going to actually just move that to the back bar, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the armor type, light armor, and we're going to grab Harness Magicka as our shield to protect ourselves from damage. Now, if you guys noticed how I did that this time, I actually put a stamina ability on the front bar, or a magic ability that gives stamina back, so that way we can stay alive a little bit better, and also manage our resources better. That's usually how I would prefer to play this character, is with that ability on the front bar, playing with a little bit more support for the group, that kind of thing. Oh, I summoned a skeleton twice. There we go. But as you can see, this Mortal Coil actually heals for quite a bit, and it heals really fast, because I believe it heals every 0.5 seconds, or is it every second? It's like every second for 12 seconds, but it heals for a lot. And you also get stamina back, and then while slotted, your healing is increased by 3%. Go ahead and summon another one just to be safe. Alright, there we go. Oh, look at it, it's ugly right there. I almost died. Did you see that? Because this guy's poison damage is just ridiculous. Ow. Oh, he's gonna do his poison. I'm just gonna let him kill me now. But yeah, I can solo this guy normally. For some reason, it's just being a pain. But it's actually a really good fight, and I love it. I love playing through a lot of this content on solo play with these characters, because it does put you up to a challenge, and I like that. So. But that is it for the Plague Witch character, guys. I hope you guys liked it. I hope that those fans of orcs out there are happy that there's something else. But this is a really fun build to play, like I said. And any race can play it. It doesn't require just being an orc. In fact, Wood Elves are really good at it. Khajiits, Dark Elves, like I said, they're all really good at playing this build. But yeah, that's it. So you guys know what that means. If you guys like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.